hooked into an.
Is that bright enough? I can go
Good
brighter.
evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you could take your seat, we'll get started here with tonight's candidate forum.
I don't know why they always give us these chairs where my feet will not touch the floor.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Steve Higgins. I'm the executive editor for Spectrum Media and the Desert Valley Times here in Mesquite. It's great to be with you here for our candidate press forum. We are going to talk Mesquite City Council, the Virgin Valley Water District, and also the Mesquite mayoral race tonight. We are live streaming on Let's Talk Nevada. Tonight's forum brought to you by Let's Talk Nevada and the Desert Valley Times. Want to introduce our panelists first, and then I will talk a little bit about our format, and we'll get started. Ladies first, right there in the middle is Lorraine DeHaze. The S is silent. She's one of the original residents of Sun City, moved here 9 years ago after Sun City opened. She and her husband, Jim, moved from Klamath Falls, Oregon. Prior to that, lived on the Big Island and Oahu in Hawaii. She is the membership and events coordinator for Sun City Mesquite. Here closest to me is Lucas Thomas. He's a reporter who wears many hats for us here at the Desert Valley Times in Mesquite. As I shared with y'all last time we were here, Lucas moved here from Maine earlier this year. He had 2 really strong internships in Washington, D.C. before joining us. He's been a great addition to our team, lives right here in Mesquite. And right there on the end is Mr. John Williams. He's one of the principal founders of Let's Talk Nevada that began publishing in May 2013. Prior to moving to Mesquite in 2010, John had a 35-year career in corporate management, during which he served as CEO of 12 companies in 7 industries that included private as well as publicly owned corporations, ranging from small startup companies to some with more than 1,000 employees in operations in 43 states. And thank you all for being here and being on the panel tonight. We appreciate that. All right, our format tonight, we're going to start, of course, with our city council candidates. And once I turn the page, I'll tell you how it's all going to work. Each of our 3 panel members will ask each candidate 3 questions in a rotation. Panelists will have 15 seconds to ask and explain questions, and each candidate will have 75 seconds to answer for a total of 1.5 minutes for each question. At the beginning of each session, the moderator, that's me, will give each candidate a minute to introduce him or herself to the audience and explain why he or she is running and why he or she would be a good choice. The timer right there will tell you when you should wrap it up. All right, I would like right now to introduce Mr. Corey Clementson from here at Wolf Creek, and Corey, where are you? There's Corey right there. Just like to bring him up and certainly thank him as always for his hospitality and letting us hang out at one of the prettiest places here in Mesquite.
Thank you, Steve. First and foremost, want to thank Steve, the DVT, John, Let's Talk Nevada, and Sun City for being here and putting this event on. As you know, this event has started a few years ago to really give the press the opportunity to ask our wonderful candidates great, honest, tough, but fair questions, and give you, our great citizens of Mesquite, a chance to listen to our candidates in a nice setting with lots of good questions so you can make an informed decision about who you will vote for and help you with that. And hopefully it provides some great information for you to make a good informed decision. So thank you. I want to first also thank our wonderful candidates tonight. We've got some great candidates. The folks that have participated here on our city council, our water district, our mayor race. So thank you in advance. And also, probably want to thank our wonderful staff here at Wolf Creek. They work very hard moving chairs and tables around the afternoon, and our wonderful chef, Chef Allen back there, so we can give it up for him for putting together these wonderful hors d'oeuvres. Thank you. Justine, who's our food and beverage manager, wanted me to make sure that I at least took the opportunity tonight to let you know that Wolf Creek is open back for dinners on Friday and Saturday night. And so please come out and hopefully enjoy it. We have as you can see, our wonderful new furniture. We have fantastic food. We hopefully will see you there on Friday night as we open up back up for dinners. Once again, want to thank everyone for participating in this event. It's been real special to put it on and have the press take this as their event. We're so glad to host it. Thank you very much, and want to wish you good luck tonight. So thank you.
Thank you again, Corey. At the beginning here, as we get into questions, we will have a question from Corey for all of the candidates tonight. First, as we get started, we'll go with City Council right here. We have 3 candidates with us tonight, Mr. Mike Benham, Ms. Cindy Delaney, and Mr. David West. Please welcome them. Mr. Brian Worston had intended to be here tonight and has a family matter that has unfortunately required his attention and was unable to join us. He certainly wishes he could be here. The other 2 candidates had declined to be here, George Rapson and David Ballwig, who had also had a family situation. As we get started here, I'm going to go ahead and give 1 minute to each of the candidates to introduce themselves, and then we will go ahead and start with questions. We'll start right here with Mr. Benham.
My name is Mike Benham. One of the reasons I'm running for City Council is because I think we need some improvement and some more transparency than what we've had. This is a great city. I think we have to be more business friendly. Get good businesses into town and not chase them away, which seems to have been in the past. And I'm not happy about that, and I'm sure you're not. The City Council says, that they're low on funds. Well, if we get good businesses to come in town and stay, maybe we can put our revenue back to where it should be. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Delaney. I was appointed to Mesquite City Council May 27th, 2014. And I would like to continue making a positive difference in this wonderful city of ours. I believe that we've already become business friendly, and I think that there's a bright future for Mesquite. I got a little note today from our city manager. Deep Roots today renewed their business license and paid over $41,000. And in their quarterly gross sales, they paid in over $28,000. Do the math on that. That's well over $100,000 a year. I think that things are getting better. I think Mesquite has a bright future. And I think that we need to continue moving forward and doing things that make Mesquite the wonderful town that we all moved here for, and so that we can have a great future for our children and grandchildren.
Good evening. I'm Dave West. I'm probably the youngest person running for City Council, and I think that gives me a unique perspective. I look around at our community and I agree, we're recovering, we're improving. But where we're going to see the greatest growth is our industry and our working class. As a father of 6 children, they are right down the hill here my home's right down the hill here from Wolf Creek, and I enjoy this community. I love it. But I also want to see my kids be able to have careers that have opportunities here in our community. We have great opportunities for our seniors and our retirees. And as we develop more industry and more economic potential for increased wages and better opportunities for our kids that are graduating from high school, that maybe they won't go to college here, but they will come back to our community, invigorate it and enliven it, and build everyone so everyone prospers here in Mesquite.
Thank you very much. We will start with a question from Corey Clemenson here for the City Council. Like each of you to answer the question. Currently, Mesquite has 3 seats on the board and pays 95% of the revenue, and Bunkerville has 2 seats and pays 5% of the revenue. We understand that City Council cannot control the water district and its decisions. If the VVWD votes to raise rates in the future to match Las Vegas rates, this would potentially jeopardize the financial stability of the golf course industry and eventually the town. If this were to occur, would you be willing to vote as a council member to advocate with the Nevada State Legislature for a change in the number of seats held by Mesquite and Bunkerville to better reflect the current revenue and usage?
Absolutely. The golf industry is huge.
Okay.
We on? Okay. The golf industry is huge for Mesquite. We all know that. Brings in visitors, brings in money, and water is a big issue. There's no doubt about it. It's all over. But yes, I would definitely agree with that, to have more people and sign a petition or whatever it takes to keep our golf industry strong, because it is huge for this community. It brings in a lot of money.
I think that it's something that we definitely need to look into. I've just come into some information recently that says that we need to investigate this at a deeper level. I was told, and I want to find out for sure, that Bunkerville just recently started paying for water. So maybe Mesquite's been paying the whole bill for a long time. And I think we need to check into these things a little deeper. And yes, I would be willing to at least look into this. And if we're paying more and we are representing more of that, of what the Virgin Valley Water District is, then maybe we do need more representation. We shouldn't always just leave things the way they were just because, well, that's the way they've always been.
One of the great things about the Virgin Valley Water District is it's much like the Mesquite City Council, that there's a 5-member board, and 3 of those seats are held by citizens of Mesquite, typically. Now, that majority controls that board. And when the citizens of Mesquite are united, and when the board members from the city of Mesquite are united, they will ensure that our interests are protected here in Mesquite. And that includes the golf courses. We need to recognize that there are different types of water here in our valley. There's culinary water, there's well water, there's affluent water, there's river water. Each of those are a unique resource that have to be priced individually and used to the best for the community as a whole. If we ignore that fact and try to put the same price on everything, we will fail the city. And I believe the board is doing well with that right now. But if there's a point where there's a threat to the economy of Mesquite because of water prices, then we have to readdress that issue.
Thank you. It's my turn to stop talking, and it's the 3 of you. You get to start talking. John, take it away.
Okay, so my first question will be to Mr. Benham, and we'll kind of go in a rotation here. Mike, the city of Mesquite has had a budget shortfall of approximately $1 million a year for 7 years now, even though it has cut personnel and services to the bone, and we're running low on reserves. The city receives the vast majority of its revenues from the consolidated tax, where all revenues from taxes is sent to the state, who then divides it between municipalities, meaning that the city raises taxes, it would only get 30 to 40% of the money. One of the very few ways for the city to actually get more money is to increase city fees. Indeed, it did so when it granting a license to Deep Roots Medical. and now receives tens of thousands of dollars per quarter from Deep Roots Medical. Realizing the Mesquite cannot continue devouring its now meager cash reserves, Mayor Lippman proposed an increased fee on packaged liquor sales in Mesquite to help dig us out of our deficit. But the City Council, led by Councilman Hafen and Rapson, defeated the measure. After hoping to have a balanced budget this year and having those hopes dashed by the settlement with the city employees that everyone with a brain saw coming, the city is once again facing another deficit year, and there are huge storm clouds on the horizon. Would you have supported Lippman's proposal if you were elected to the City Council? And if not, what would you propose to balance the city budget?
I certainly would support Mayor Lippman. You know, the Lee family said that 3% was too much, but they were willing to pay 1.75. The council said, no, we don't want it. If your boss said to you, I'm going to give you 1.75 raise, how many of you would turn it down? Put your hands up. Thank you, that's what I thought. But that's what your city council did. If we had $1 million worth of sales, that's 175,000, okay? What they wanted to do with that money was to help the police department put more police officers on. Okay, and that I do not understand. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi Cindy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. My question is, what can the city council do to enhance the growth of Mesquite?
We can continue to do exactly what we've been doing, and that is to find ways to sell the land that we have more than enough of. We can continue to approve business licenses when they even have to come to us at all. Encouraging growth is one of those things, like it's like watering your plants. As long as you're out there and you're kind of pushing it along, it comes. I think we've done a lot in this city as far as you know, we set up the funds for MRB as we took out of, I'm trying to think, 24%, I'd have to look at some numbers, and set that aside to go to MRB and to help economic growth. We were all very much in favor of that. And I think those are the kind of things that we can do. We have committees and we have people that are out there really trying. MRB is bringing in things like RevRB. And I mean, growth has started in Mesquite again. Look around you. There's construction. There's new businesses. It's an exciting time.
Thank you.
Where's our wireless mic? Over here. Mr. West, how are you?
Doing good.
You mentioned in your opening that it's important for the city to kind of develop a workforce for the future, so your kids can have some industry in this city. So give me a concrete way of how we do that. How does this city develop a workforce going forward that can accommodate, you know, the businesses that this city wants to bring in? How can we do that?
I think it's going to be a matter of attracting businesses that have a demand for that workforce. I don't think we're going to right now have growth based on our current population. And that means groups like we just mentioned, RevRB, they are going to need skilled laborers. We're seeing some things with Mesquite Works and some of the other organizations here in town that they're actively seeking monies to provide training, to provide skills development. At our high school this year, they're starting a culinary school, or culinary classes. Those are going to develop into higher paying jobs instead of a minimum wage jobs that will not be able to support a family in the future and frankly can't support a family now. So as those businesses are attracted and as they come in, and that comes from the incentives the city's willing to give. Ms. Delaney just mentioned we have tons of land. We need to make that land available and make compelling argument to businesses that we're going to give you the land for the guarantee of paying those higher jobs. So.
Okay, we'll change the order now, and this question will be for you, Cindy. And I apologize, this is a long question. It takes some time for me to.
You only have 15 seconds, he said so.
You better not shut me up. But I'm going to ask the same question of Mayor Littman and of Sandra Raymaker, the three incumbents who are here tonight. So I've asked them to pay attention so we don't have to sit through the question when it's their turn. The tradition of debates and press forums such as this have long been the place where journalists and citizens can ask candidates for public office questions about their intentions as elected representatives and to hold them accountable for their actions and records as public officials. In recent years, and in this election season in particular, there seems to be a perceivable effort by many candidates to try to avoid such debates and forums. Starting at the top, Donald Trump refused to attend one primary debate and has recently raised questions about whether he'll participate in upcoming debates. At the Nevada U.S. Senate level, candidate Catherine Cortez Masto proposed 3 debates between herself and her opponent, Joe Heck, several months ago, and Mr. Heck finally agreed to one last week. In Congressional District 3, candidate Rosen proposed 2 debates with opponent Tarkanian early August, and last week Tarkanian grudgingly agreed to one, and only on the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, where his opponent is a Jewish leader in the community. Getting a little closer to here, in Congressional District 4, Crescent Harvey and Reuben Kewin proposed 3 debates on forums months ago, and Hardy has yet to agree to participate in any. And so here we are at the premier candidate event in Mesquite. 2 of the 6 city council candidates, Mr. Candidate David Ballweg and City Councilman George Rapson, both declined to participate within 1 day of receiving the invitation more than 30 days ago. As you heard earlier, a 3rd candidate, Brian Worston, tried to reschedule a prior out-of-town family commitment, but was ultimately unable to make it, while offering to meet anytime and any place to answer unscripted questions on camera and on the record, an offer that I will surely take him up on, and I'll invite the DVT to participate in that message. The press and the public should be alarmed about this trend by elected officials and candidates to resist or refuse to subject themselves to questions from the public and the press in a debate-style public format. I know that I am. With that explanation and background, I now ask Cindy what your position is regarding public officials making themselves available and accountable to their constituents and the press, and what you would do to increase public access.
Well, I think I'm about one of the most transparent, available people here. Everybody knows where they can find me. Everybody has my phone number. And I cannot speak for those candidates that are not here. I'm here. I've been to every single one of these, and I've got several events coming up that you can come and ask me. If not, call me. Leave a message with Joy at City Hall. I'll get back to you. I think that what we can do is, you judge people on how they act. I can't say why they're not here. I can't force them any more than you guys could force any of the other candidates you just mentioned to show up. This was a choice. It's an option. You guys very graciously give us the opportunity to come and meet and greet and talk to people and answer questions. So I think that we should all be available all the time. And I guess I know that I am, and I don't know how to answer it for the others, Mike.
Good evening, David. In order to mitigate the efforts of secondhand smoke on the health of casino employees, do you favor a city ordinance to ban smoking to protect casino employees from exposure to tobacco smoke? Or do you favor a city payroll tax to provide a health care fund for casino employees when they offer or when they begin to suffer from the effects of exposures to tobacco smoke? Or are you in favor of doing nothing, a city policy on employee exposure to tobacco smoke? David, would you provide a brief explanation for your position on tobacco smoke exposure.
My position comes from seeing my coworkers over at Reliance Connects. Many of them go into people's homes, and the proposals that I've seen don't address those kind of issues. Many people are exposed to secondhand smoke in a lot of different areas. I understand there are major health implications for our casino workers here in town, but I'm not sure that here at the city council level is where that needs to be addressed. All the other smoking laws in the state of Nevada have been addressed at the state level, and I would continue to defer to that level to make legislation on that issue.
Mr. Benham, I know in speaking with you, excuse me, you've made a priority of your campaign to show that you're more than just a one-issue candidate. So I'll just ask you pretty upfront, if elected to city council, what are 3 issues that you'll bring light to and you'll try to work on city council?
Well, income is definitely number one. I mean, that's priority. We have to get more businesses to come in to get our revenue up. That's number one. Number 2 is definitely our emergency services need a lot of help. They really do. I know I've been called a one-issue candidate, but the police department gave a class for the CERT members, and they only had a supervisor and 2 police officers on for the whole shift from 6 to 6, and that's just not good enough. The fire department, I stopped by there to pick up something for CERT. They had 1 firefighter EMT in the whole house. Everybody else was gone. That's unacceptable. I'm sorry. The third thing I would like to see is the city council and the MRB definitely to encourage businesses to come here. We don't want to see anybody leave. We want more people to come to get our revenue. So that's where I stand on the revenue.
Good evening, David. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
As I understand it, if recreational use of marijuana is approved by the citizens of the state of Nevada in November, as polls predict is likely, then Mesquite residents and visitors will be able to get marijuana. So the question will not be whether or not the citizens and visitors will have access to recreational marijuana. It is simply whether or not the city will get any of the revenues generated by the sale of recreational marijuana. Will you support or oppose the sale of recreational marijuana in Mesquite?
That's a great question. First of all, anybody that wants to get marijuana can get it right now. I think anybody would agree with that. And in discussions with our police forces, they're saying that any of their drug crimes, anything, narcotics of any form, there's also marijuana there. So I have great concerns about that. As far as recreational, if it's approved in the state, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to approve it here in the city of Mesquite. Grateful for polling and voting records that show local approval. Now, the reason I bring that up is because we have a great business. On Saturday, I got to go tour the new Rising Star Casino, Rising Star Hotel. And over there, they're going to be attracting young families. They say you marry who you date. And those young families are often wealthy families that have businesses, that own businesses, that make decisions on where businesses are located. I would rather cater to those groups than to the marijuana industry that's going to be catered to in Las Vegas and available there in Las Vegas. We don't have to compete with Las Vegas on every issue in every way.
Just as a follow-up to that, it is my understanding that recreational marijuana is approved in the state. Mesquite will not be able to outlaw it. Mesquite will only have the opportunity to not allow a sales facility in Mesquite. But it's not that far outside of Mesquite before you're outside of Mesquite.
I've thought of that issue. It's going to be quite a ways, though, where somebody can find the necessary power, utility, water services to set up a shop. At least all the way down to Overton, and I don't think they're going to do it down there. And so it'll probably be down to Las Vegas before that type of facility is available. which will help crime issues that have been prevalent in California, or not California, Colorado. We're seeing issues about increased hospital visits, ER visits, where young children are being exposed to edibles that are not properly marked and properly constrained. So those things are all concerns to me as a young father and a person that's concerned about the youth in our community.
Good evening, David. Mike, excuse me. What are the 3 most important things done by the city? And would you speak about one of them?
I think the city in the past, since I've been here, and I've only been here for 6 years, especially the last 3 years with the MRB bringing huge industry into the city, like the RV place that's coming, there's going to be huge income. There's no doubt about it. And the jobs are going to be great. They're going to be high-paying jobs because they're going to need plumbers, they're going to need electricians, they're going to need body workers, and to work on RVs, and especially the company who's coming here, they're not a cheap outfit. They make the best RVs in the country. You're talking about $500,000 to $1 million units. And for them to come here, and from what I understand, they're going to start off with 20 to 40 bays and have, good mechanics there. And that's a great thing for the city of Mesquite. I really do. And I think that they're the type of businesses that we could have in Mesquite where we could get our high school kids. They're not all going to be doctors and lawyers. They can work with their hands. And if these companies can do an apprenticeship for these kids and they stay there, it's going to be huge for us.
Got a resident submitted question for you, Ms. Delaney. This is from Pat Gallagher. Did any of the current members of City Council question the need for an additional police officer, especially when the city is imposing mandatory cutbacks of all other city departments?
No, not a bit. When I moved here in 2005, we were 13,000 people. Today, we're just about to be certified at 19,000, with an increase of over 6,000 residents over the last 12 years. And then, come on, let's face it, on any given weekend, we've got anywhere from 2,000 to 15,000 extra people in this town. We are grossly understaffed in both fire and police, and I would hope that we could find a way to rectify that in the future. We've, as businesses grow with the truck stop and with Rev RV and Deep Roots and some of these other things, I'm hoping that we can get back up to full capacity like we were from 2005 to 2007.
Great. Back to you, Mike, as we continue our rotation. The use and protection of federal public lands is an important issue to many Merchant Valley residents. Do you support the continued ownership and management of public lands by the federal government? Or do you support the Bundy and Hardy positions that want to see public lands turned over to local control?
I follow the law, and whatever the law is, I'm going to follow it. I'm not a lawbreaker. If the government says it's their land until they turn it over, it's their land. As much as the Bundys may say, well, it's our land too, until, like I said, till the federal government say, yeah, we're going to give you X amount of land. It would be like the city of Mesquite owning land and a developer come in and say, no, that's my land, now I'm going to take that. It doesn't work that way. The law is the law, and I support the law.
Cindy, one single issue in Sun City Mesquite is the intersection we have at Falcon Ridge Parkway and Flat Top Mesa. Sun City Mesquite has 1,193 homes to date and over 2,000 residents. In the past, we have had a four-way stop, but many years ago the signs were removed. Has there been any talk about installing a possible stoplight in that particular intersection?
At Flat Top and Falcon Ridge? I know that we got some letters from some people. I do know that Mr. Tanner went out, and both Mr. Tanners, both our police chief and our public works guy went out and they did the speed tests and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember there ever being, I'm not saying there wasn't, I don't remember there being a stop sign at that corner. So no, at this point, I don't think there's been a sign of that. They talked about lowering the speed limit was one of the questions we kept getting asked. And I think that Chief Tanner said that the difference was negligible in between how fast you went, and that is a feeder street. It's not an actual residential street. It's supposed to be a feeder street like Pioneer and Mesquite Boulevard. But I have not heard any conversation about a stop sign.
It would actually be a stoplight that I'm inquiring about.
Oh, a stoplight, then the answer would definitely be no. People ask us that. There's a lot of places around town where I think we need a red light. Let's take Pioneer and Grapevine. Let's take Turtleback and is it Pioneer or whatever street goes up over there. There's a lot of places where I think there are. Problem becomes this, and because trust me, I have really torn Billy Tanner's ear up on this one. I'm sitting here looking at Travis. He knows what I'm going to say. If we put in a red light, we take responsibility for it. So then when somebody gets killed at that red light, even though the red light's there, it's the city of Mesquite's responsibility. If we wait until it meets the warrants, meaning enough traffic goes through there and NDOT comes in and says, you need a red light here, then if somebody gets killed, and I know this is a horrible thing to say, because some of those places I'm scared to drive across, Pioneer from Grapevine there. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but we don't want to put that responsibility back on the city of Mesquite. That's the reason why it doesn't go in.
Mr. West, get a resident submitted question for you as well, also from Pat Gallagher. Asks, the rec center, which is one of the few family-oriented facilities in the city, which the city operates, recovers approximately 65% of costs through user fees. The ball fields, which are primarily used by folks from outside Mesquite, recovers less than 30% of their costs through user fees. In effect, the residents are subsidizing the out-of-town ball players in the local hotels by paying such a large percentage of the cost of maintaining these facilities. As a candidate, would you look at raising the user fees for the ball fields to bring it more in line with the cost recovery percentage of the rec center? If not, why not?
One of the major things that I think is the responsibility of city government is to purchase and maintain amenities, whether they're roads or parks, that benefit all of the community. Our fields that we have that, not always is it a penny for penny on cost versus use, but the turnaround in the economy here is that when we have big tournaments here in town, you can't find a seat in a restaurant. Those employees are working extra hours, they're feeding their families, and it's generating more dollars here in our local economy. So there's trade-offs, and if we want to go and do everything dollar for dollar, then we're going to have to start charging some people on some streets taxes to pay because not many people use their street. That's just not an effective way of doing business from a city government standpoint. So sometimes we spend a little bit more on things to attract other people and bring in the revenue in other ways.
Cindy, your turn. Again, I'm going to repeat a question I asked somebody else earlier because it's important, and you were a vote regarding the budget shortfalls we've had for the number of years, and Mayor Littman's proposal to raise the license fees, don't call it a tax, on packaged liquor, and I believe you voted against that proposal. Do you still think that was a good vote, and if so, why?
Yes, I do, and I think that Mayor Littman himself would vouch for the fact that in the early stages of this discussion, I was very much in favor of it, and I think that was when we believed that we could impose this excise tax on just alcohol, and it seemed very simple. Then we get to the state level, and good old Nevada, and don't get me wrong, I love Nevada, But we do some things in really strange fashions here. And cities in Nevada cannot add any tax, sales tax, excise tax, anything like that on their own. Just like you mentioned about the, property tax. I'm gonna run out of time on this one. But basically, by the time we got all the way through this, it became a very convoluted way. If we could simplify it again and bring it back down, I would be in favor of it. But at this time, it was just gonna put an extra stress on all of those businesses, not only Lee's Liquor. We talked to Smith's and Walmart and all those places. There were gonna be layers of things that we're gonna have to do to get this fee straightened out. And so, yes, I believe it was still a good idea to not do it at this time.
And if you recall, the second part of that question was, what do you propose to balance the city budget?
Well, I'm going to either make a lot of people happy or a lot of people unhappy. I really hope that question 2 passes. And I personally believe that because we can't, you said it and everybody knows it, just because something is legal, if it's legal statewide, we can't outlaw the use of recreational marijuana. Why on earth would I want to send people to Las Vegas or even to Moab or anywhere else to buy a product produced right here in Mesquite when we could be making that money off of it? Why would I want to do that? So I hope that question 2 passes, and I think that will make a huge difference. Anybody that wants to can contact me, and I will give you links to multiple stories across the nation that show where things like recreational marijuana have basically saved small towns. And there's not a real increase in crime. Like David said, if I want pot, I can go get pot right now. But I think that those are some of the things we do, and increasing business, but that takes time.
David, what are the 3 most important things done by the city?
Okay,
You change every time, Michael.
all right. The 3 most important things done by the city. One, like I said in my last answer, is that cities and municipal organizations, they buy the things that it's ineffective for individuals to buy themselves. Things like roads, parks, recreational facilities. The second thing a city does is it provides an environment for regulation, appropriate regulation to keep some businesses away from schools while encouraging development in others. The third thing a city does is it provides a sense of community. And here in Mesquite, we have a great sense of community. We have a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And here, I'm happy to be part of it. I'm happy to be somebody that's seeking your vote as a city council member to continue to provide opportunities for everybody here in our community.
Mr. Benham, in your open, you said that a priority that the city should have is to make sure that businesses stay in the city, which is something that the city is battling, obviously, with businesses leaving the city. So how do we keep businesses in the city? Are there regulations that need to be implemented or removed? How do we keep businesses here in Mesquite?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, really. The city council, I mean, we have the MRB who brings businesses in. We have the chamber who can help them. The city council can support the MRB to get them in, but it's not the city's job to actually bring them in. That's what they pay the MRB for. As a council member, I think it's a great idea to sit down with all the businesses and say, hey, how can we help you and what can we do to help you stay here? Instead of letting them just fold up the doors and go. Well, we've lost some good businesses here. We lost the Mexican market, okay? We lost Burger King. I mean, these are places that, residents go to. I know I've heard that Wendy's is coming in down 18. The one thing I really would like to see is that businesses are coming and be on Mesquite Boulevard. I mean, I had a lady stop me as I was coming out of City Hall. Swear to God, she said, "Could you tell me where downtown Mesquite is?" I said, "You're here." She went, "Are you kidding me? This is it?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, this is it."
So you think? So you think a better line of communication between city council and the business would help that?
I do. I think with the MRB, the Chamber of Commerce, and the City Council, if they could all get together and meet with the new businesses coming in, and so everybody's on the same page. You know what I mean? If I ask you a question, by the time it gets to Mr. Williams, it's different. This way, all the outline is done. In fact, I know a lady who wanted to open a business, and she was just about to open, and they came in and said, "Nope, you can't open. You don't have a grease trap." She said, "But I'm not cooking. I'm baking." They said, "Don't matter. We're not giving you a license." These are the type of things that drive businesses away, where a simple solution, when she put the permit in, they should have sat down and says, "This is what you're going to need," and then she would have been happy. So that's where I'm at.
Mr. West, there's a question from one of our readers directed at you.
Awesome.
Do you think prayer should be part of government meetings?
You know, I answered this question in the primary forum. The Supreme Court made that ruling. They said that it's okay, it's legitimate, even if it's one religion dominating it. I think I'm going to give the same answer I gave then. We need divine guidance. City Council needs heavenly help sometimes to make the right decisions. And if a pastor, a preacher, a reverend, a priest wants to come in and offer that blessing, I'm not going to turn them away.
Mike, what should be done to balance the budget? And how would you go about doing that?
Well, I think that's going to be a big issue. But I do think with the new businesses coming in, it's really going to help. The city said they balanced the budget, and yet the police department come in and had to do 2 emergency hires. So maybe the budget's not going to be balanced this year. They're down to the bare minimum of staff. There's certain departments in the city that only have 1 person in it. So I'm just hoping that with all the new businesses coming in, the revenue goes up, we can get the staff back up to where it should be, and make Mesquite a safe and healthy place to live.
This is sentiment raised by a resident as well, Ms. Delaney, and this was a topic of some city council discussion as well. You recall the dog park discussion a few months back. It got pretty testy. Is there any planning currently going on for a new dog park? Again, this is submitted by Joni Blewett. Grant money is available to build a dog park, so what is the status of a new dog park?
It's definitely being looked into at this time. Mr. Montoya and along with the mayor and some other people are looking at different locations. But since I have extra time, I have to say that Mr. Benham, while you're a good friend of mine, you got it wrong. The business that was trying to come in, the city didn't turn them down because of the lack of grease trap. That was the health district. We don't go in and check for grease traps, etc. That's Southern Nevada Health District. All we do is issue a business license, and if they can't open for some of those other things, that's probably the health district or some other state or county, some other agency other than the city of Mesquite.
Okay, now we're back on the last rotation, Mike. In the last year, there was a proposed lease of some public lands for fracking in central Utah and Nevada, which could have eventually posed a danger to the basins from which we get our drinking water. The lease auctions were eventually canceled. Are you in favor of fracking in Nevada? Why or why not? And if so, under what circumstances or restrictions?
Good question. I'm not really up on that, but my opinion would be that everything has, there's regulations, and sometimes the regulations are too strict, okay? As far as we go back to the water issue, we need it. We really do. Everybody knows that. But there has to be how should I put it, a panel to look into it, let's put it like that, where they could do all the research and bring all the facts and figures back before I would vote on anything, okay? I'm not just gonna vote on open, so I would need to see all the figures and the facts before I would vote on anything.
Cindy, I asked David earlier in order to mitigate the effects of secondhand smoke, which is always a big topic in Mesquite. On the health of the casino employees, do you favor a city ordinance to ban smoking to protect casino employees from exposure to the tobacco smoke? Or do you favor a city payroll tax to provide a health care fund for casino employees when they begin to suffer from the effects of the exposure? Or are you in favor of doing nothing?
You know, I've done a lot of homework on this very issue. And I tell you what, I wish I had the magic wand. Nobody likes, well, I'm not gonna say nobody, because obviously the smokers like cigarette smoke. But most people don't like cigarette smoke. And I wish that we could make that ordinance and it would be just great. But I tell you what, you go look at the state comptrollers of any state or any city that this has happened in. There's anywhere from a 5% to a 20% loss in revenue within the first 2 years. Here in Mesquite, do you know what that means? If they lose as little as 5%, what's gonna happen? We're gonna have layoffs. Now we have over 2,000 hospitality workers in this city. Tell me which 150 to 200 of your neighbors do you want to not have a job? And that's the reason I'm not in favor of that. Sure, I want clean air, but I can't look at 150 of my friends and neighbors and say, well, now you're gonna get laid off because they're not gonna recover for a couple of years.
Mr. West, as the city heads to the voting booths to pick a city council, the city's also kind of developing its charter committee, which is sort of unprecedented territory, I guess, for the city. So if elected to council, how do you envision working with that charter committee? What responsibilities do you envision them having, and how can city council kind of work with their concerns and work with the charter committee?
Well, first of all, I'm very glad that we have professional staff in Mr. Sweeten that wants to take on this huge responsibility. He's very encouraged, and that's one of the beauties of being an elected city council person. You don't have to be an expert in everything. We have an incredible city staff, and we can generally rely on them for good input, for advice on both sides of an issue, and use that when you're up on the dais to make good decisions that benefit everyone. The charter, we have a lot of examples here in Nevada and here in Clark County that we can refer to develop that and make it acceptable to everyone and provide for the future of our city in a very positive and business-friendly and community-friendly way.
Or I could just scream. Cindy, my last question for you. Concerning the shipment of nuclear waste to Yucca Mountain, Congressman Heck says he's open to negotiating about bringing nuclear waste to Nevada. Danny Tarkadian thinks Yucca Mountain is ideal for nuclear waste storage. Congressman Hardy started his first term pushing Nevadans to support some kind of bargain in exchange for turning Nevada into the nuclear test dumping ground for the nation. Congressman Amidei also wants to have that discussion, and Hardy said, I don't think there's a better place for it. Much of that toxic waste would travel right through the center of Mesquite on I-15 on its way to Yucca Mountain. Do you support or oppose such proposals?
Well, as a former truck driver, I'm not particularly worried about it traveling through on I-15. Those kind of loads, and we've hauled some really hazardous material loads, are very well sealed, and if need be, have police escorts, etc. I guess my answer to that would be, I guess I'm just glad I don't live near Yucca Mountain. And should we put, where do we want to put this hazardous waste? No, I don't want it in Mesquite, or in Nevada, but it's got to go somewhere. So I think I need to do more research and more homework on this issue But like I said, as far as it traveling through on the interstate, I'm not concerned about that.
Another issue that came up with some of our Sun City residents is placing security cameras at the entrance of Falcon Ridge Parkway, adjacent to the waterfall.
You didn't say.
Would you be in favor of monitoring, well, not monitoring with the city council, but would you be in favor of the police department and Sun City Mesquite monitoring and maintaining for security purposes a video camera?
I'm not sure I would see the immediate benefit for constant monitoring. We do have some privacy laws here in the United States, and some, and if not laws, some principles. But traffic cameras and security cameras are often used to record and document by businesses, and if there's a need for somebody to do it in their private business, I would encourage it. I know there are cameras here in the city that do monitor some intersections, and this police department has access to those when needed for law enforcement activities. I'm not really sure I understand with your question what would be the purpose behind it. And without understanding that, I couldn't comment on whether the city should devote the city's limited resources to monitoring or enforcement.
Well, one of the reasons why the question came about was a few years ago we had an issue of break-in in Sun City, and it was brought up at many of the meetings that we had up there. If we had a camera, then we could monitor license plates, and it would feed into the Mesquite Police Department, or possibly our IT department would also help with monitoring that. So that's basically where it came up from.
Okay, like I said, I'm not real familiar with that issue, but I think most people would not be real thrilled with that, knowing that they're being monitored going in and out of specific areas. Obviously, that changes if it sounds like this is an old issue that's not necessarily a problem anymore with, like you said, over 2,000 residents up there. I live in a neighborhood down here where neighbors on both sides are snowbirds, and so they're not there most of the time, and so we keep an eye on our neighbors' homes, and I think that's where it first starts, is being part of a community, being aware of who your neighbors are, and being a little suspicious when there's somebody there that doesn't look familiar, and maybe giving a quick call to the non-emergency line over at the police department and say, hey, can you just do a drive-by on my street? And our police department's really happy to do that on their regular patrols, and I know in my neighborhood that's helped in some instances, keeping some people that weren't supposed to be there.
I think I'm the last question, I'm not sure. But Mr. Benham, since the other two candidates have addressed this issue, I'll give you a chance to address it. The Clean Indoor Air Initiative, obviously it's been talked about quite a bit, especially in our newspaper. Ms. Delaney just raised concerns over how it would affect business and in turn affect jobs in the city. So considering, the impact that this could have, it's not just about eliminating smoke, it's about jobs, it's about how the businesses will be affected by it. So what's your stance considering those factors on the Clean Indoor Air Initiative?
Well, I am for clean air. I think everybody has a right to do what they want in their homes. If the state, it would have to be a state thing anyway. Mesquite couldn't, the council can't do anything about it. But if state law came down and says all casinos are going to be smoke-free, that's going to be the law. And there's nothing we can do about it because obviously their powers are higher than ours. If you look at Colorado, you look at Maryland, they're all smoke-free, and they seem to be doing very well. It's not as if the casinos are gonna roll up the doors and leave. Nobody wants to see anybody get laid off. I think that, you look at the casinos today, yeah, there's smoking in there, but I don't think there's as much smoke in there today than when I came here 6 years ago. I can tell the difference, because I was a smoker, now I'm a non-smoker. So I guess us non-smokers who used to be smokers sort of can tell.
I'll just follow up. You made a point to say that it's important to keep businesses in the city.
Absolutely.
If this is something that, I mean, casinos have shut down in this city before. We've had casinos leave the city. So if this is something that would start, adversely affecting those casinos, would that change your position at all?
No. No.
Finish the rotation. My last question to Mr. West. This is a question from a reader. What is your position regarding the proposals by some Western? I turned it off. What is your position regarding the proposals by some Western states organizations that seek to transfer of public federal lands to the states?
I think this one's a very simple one. It all comes back to a matter of funding. Nevada itself doesn't have the financial resources to maintain those lands if they were blanket transferred. Obviously, I think there should be some provisions for different lands to be transferred to state when there's a demonstrated use for them. That they might be, the BLM controls a lot of land here in our state, and particularly in the areas surrounding Mesquite. And sometimes those lands, that control is really good because it's preserving beautiful scenic areas for future generations. But in a lot of other areas, the land's just sitting there and it's not useful. Our sports and events complex is a great example of where some BLM land was transferred and it's been put to beneficial public use. And the city now is control of that, and we use it we brought in some great events, and we use it frequently for tournaments and lots of other sports activities. So when there's a beneficial use and there is funding for a state to manage it, we should use it, and we should have opportunity to do so.
What does the master plan for Mesquite look like?
Well, I'm on the committee for the charter, and we were talking a little bit today about how the charter will affect Mesquite, and I think it's going to be a great thing. I really do. Right now, we're governed under the 266. Maybe we can get away for a little bit with that. I think the future of Mesquite is really bright. I really do. Like I said, with the RV place coming in, Wendy's, maybe there's going to be a hotel down there, the truck stop. That's all revenue, and it's great revenue. And those are the type of places where our emergency services don't have to go because they're not going to be needed that much there. It's not like, no disrespect, but Sun City, and you're all over 55. I'm over 55 in my community too. And but I'm serious. I mean, we're the ones who going to need the emergency service. It's not going to be the high school, So yeah, I moved to Mesquite because I found Mesquite by accident, and that's the best accident I've ever had in my life, believe it or not. I love this place. That's why I volunteer. I do the soccer for the kids. I've done the parade of lights. I'm the director of the emergency response team. So I see a great future for Mesquite. I really do.
Ms. Delaney, I'll ask you a question I asked Mr. West. How will you envision yourself working with the charter committee, and what role do you think they'll have in decisions made by city council? How will that dynamic work?
Well, I'm hoping that we have a really good charter committee this time. We had people that worked diligently last time, and they had some things that people didn't agree with. And since I'm not on the charter committee, they're going to bring back suggestions to us, and they're working to create this charter right now. What I'm hoping is that as they bring this forward, that we can all come to some agreement on it. They found some things about trying to figure out why it didn't work before, since this was attempted before, why didn't it get through? And I think they found some of the big holes in that plan, and they're gonna try to figure out ways to fix those. Since I'm not on that committee, I'm just gonna get to vote on what they do. I think we're gonna have to wait and see.
Deep breath, everybody. All right, you're done. How about that? Thank you to each of you for being here tonight. Again, Mike Benham right here moved to Mesquite 6 years ago, has been active in the community. He mentioned volunteer director for the CERT program, Parade of Light, Santa Claus. You've done all those things here in town. Cindy Delaney, appointed to the city council in May 2014, is now seeking election to that seat. Cindy moved here in 2005 after spending 7 years traveling the country, driving a truck, as she mentioned, with her husband. And David West there at the end, best known in the community, of course, for all the volunteer work with the local youth organizations. David works at Reliance Connects. Thank you to all three of you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Evening to each of you, and thank you for being here. Travis Anderson right here, born and raised in one of my favorite places, Cedar City, Utah, received an associate degree at Southern Utah University and then went on to Utah State University, has worked as an engineer for 17 years. And Sandra Raymaker is elected to the Virgin Valley Water District Board twice and is now seeking re-election for a third and final term. She moved to Mesquite in 2008 after she retired from the medical field in Portland, Oregon, where I grew up. Rockwood Water Board, huh? Yeah, I used to buy a lot of baseball cards with the Rockwood Fred Meyer. Remember where that is?
Yes.
All right. Thank you both for being here. I'd like to give each of you 1 minute to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about why you believe you're a good choice in this election. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, hello. Travis Anderson. Many of you might not know me, but as he said, I moved here in 2000 to take an engineering position with Bullock Brothers Engineering, where I worked for till 2011. And at that time, I acquired an engineering position as the civil engineer for Lake Mead National Recreation Area. That drive was a little long, so I was able to get a job back here in Mesquite and started to work for the city of Mesquite since 2013. One of the things that I really feel that I can add to the water district is give them a technical side of projects, documents, try to give them a little bit more of a help that way, be really a great addition to the water board.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Raymaker, and I have been serving you for the last 6 years on the Virgin Valley Water District Board. If re-elected, I plan to continue to do my best to serve every individual and every business here equally. I believe everybody should have a right to ask questions and that they should be given the answers, especially when it's as important about our water. As most of you know, I am not related to any of the settlers here, although I do support their heritage and believe in their heritage. I am in this community because I love this community. I've been active in the community with different organizations. I believe that water is our biggest challenge. It's our biggest asset.
Time is up, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right, as we did with the city council candidates, we'll start with a question from Corey Clementson here at Wolf Creek. Currently, golf courses in Mesquite are among the highest ratepayers in the Virgin Valley Water District. As an example, Wolf Creek and Conestoga each pay annually hundreds and thousands of dollars to the Virgin Valley Water District. These fees are made up of both culinary water and irrigation water. With the huge amounts the golf courses are already paying annually, do you think it's fair to raise their rates for irrigation water? And if so, and you do get on the board, by how much do you think would be fair to raise the rates? Mr. Anderson.
That's a great question. One of the things that I really do believe is that the water, if elected to the water board, I would try to look at the community as a whole. Believe me, I do know where the golf course fits. The golf courses fit into this community. They are one of the key elements. They bring in tourism. They look at that. Now, to answer the question quite bluntly, yes, I do need to look at how the water rates affect all of those. I do feel that if I am elected, that we would want to look at those water rates a little closer. I think that talking with some of the other golf courses, there is room for that to increase. Now, those are definitely comments or concerns that we can address and meet, but I do believe it's not a high ceiling that we need to go at, but I do believe that there is a happy medium that can work for everyone.
I believe that the golf courses are the biggest industry here in Mesquite. As you will be told that for every dollar that is spent golfing, our economy receives $1.50. The cost of the water that we are leasing to the golf courses is non-potable water. It's water that you will never have any use for or be able to use. It's nasty water. But they spend the extra money to take care of that. They treat it, they have power structures and ways to get it here so that it keeps the golf courses in Mesquite. I understand and I believe that in a couple of years when these leases come up that we will do some negotiations. I believe they need to be very reasonable. And I'm hoping that we all come to the table with an open mind and not just think about all the revenue it could bring to the water district.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we will turn it over to our panel.
Good evening, Travis. Thank you for being here. There's been a lot of concern in recent years by many about the conflicts of interest, or at least the appearance of conflicts of interest of elected officials in general, and in particular in the ranks of the Virgin Valley Water District, as well as its board. There's a history of Virgin Valley Water District board members and key employees with founding familiar names, buying millions of dollars of water rights to river water, which is likely to never be potable, and paying record prices for them to other families with founder names, because they're the ones that got the river water when they moved, when their great-grandparents moved here. So there is a concern about conflicts of interest between private water owners and users and directors of the public water utility. Would you please outline for us any familial relationships that you have in the Virgin Valley with relatives who own or operate businesses, own any water rights, or otherwise might create the appearance of a conflict of interest for you if elected to the Virgin Valley Water District Board?
Certainly. Well, first of all, my wife works at the water district. She's a customer service representative. So with that being known, I would obviously realize that for any items that would address her or staff, I would have to recuse myself. As an engineer, I like to research things, and I've looked at that kind of situation just briefly, and that would be very minimal, less than 10% of the agenda items that I looked at I would have to recuse myself. As far as any of the other relatives that have water rights, that's a great question, and I am related to Craig Anderson, Ken Anderson, Dave Anderson. I honestly don't know what their water rights are. My relation to them is their grandfather and my grandfather, my grandfather were brothers. So it's a distant, way distant relative situation, but I do not believe that that would hinder me at all on making sure I'm okay with the whole water district community.
Hi, Sandra. If you are reelected, what would Virgin Valley Water do to lessen their expenses to keep from increasing water rates to their customers?
I don't think that the Virgin Valley Water District will ever be able to decrease. And I think that eventually we will even have what you might consider maybe a 1% built-in raise to rates every year so that people can adjust to them. We have established a debt reduction fee that is taking care of the majority of our debt ratio for all of our bonds, which was a large percentage of what our income was to begin with. And we did raise rates, and we have settled some other issues that were going on so that we have some income. But our main issue right now is to maintain our infrastructure and to use the money we have and try to keep growing and giving you the best service we can.
Mr. Anderson, as the city tries to grow and develop economically, how do we best allocate our water resources for those prospective businesses?
Well, I think the water district actually has a good plan as far as, well, it's the same. We, as a community as a whole, we try to get not only residents, but development that can help these residents stay here. So as far as I believe that the water district has an ample supply of water to meet the needs of the residents. Currently, right now, they're doing a master plan update to identify the areas where they can grow, they can continue to increase their infrastructure needs. I do believe that in the future, that being able to look at the aquifer, the basin, is a good idea. I think that we have different needs right now that we can look at. But to try to create more economic growth, I don't know if there's anything that we can really do to try to get people here more than what we're already doing.
Well, Sandra, as promised, long ago in a faraway place, I asked a very long question regarding candidates resisting appearing in public forums and answering questions from constituents. And if you recall that, I now ask you, as an incumbent water board member, what your position is regarding public officials making themselves available and accountable to their constituents and to the press, and what you would do to increase public access.
I believe there's nothing more important than transparency. And I think as an elected official, or even someone running that isn't already elected, need to make yourself available for people to ask you questions. You may not always like their questions, you may not always understand or have the answers, but you can research it. When you're running for an election and you're going to hold office, you belong to everybody. You don't have a private life anymore. And if you think you will, you won't. But that's okay, because that's why you're doing it. You're doing it because it's something that you really care about. It's not just for, somebody might say, prestige to do something, but making yourself available. I mean, my phone number is out there, my home phone, my cell phone, my address. I'm always available. I have set up different public sessions where people are more than welcome to come and talk to me. And I think everybody should be available to do that, and that we should be available to respond to whatever you want to know.
Hello, Travis. Can you give information on an upcoming water tank that will be constructed up in Sun City, Mesquite?
The only information that I have would be what I have gotten from the water district meetings, that they are looking at that. I have had discussions with Kevin Brown as the city engineer. One of the good things that I really believe helps me to fill in this is the ability to be able to work as part of the city and the water district. I feel that would be a super advantage for the water district as we work together. But as far as the water tank issue, I don't know a lot of details other than it will help to increase the pressures and to help the water system in the Sun City dramatically. When I worked for Bullock Brothers, one of the things, another special thing that I have is I was able to work on the water distribution model when we were looking at that. So I have a definite knowledge of the water system, not only in Sun City, but also in the city of Mesquite. So to answer your question, the water tank issue that I know about will help the citizens of Sun City to increase the water pressure and give you another avenue so that it's not just a single line system.
Ms. Raymaker, I don't think it's much of a secret that there's sometimes a difference of opinion on the water board, to put it lightly. So how do you work with a group that doesn't always see eye to eye to get stuff done?
Well, I'll admit there's times when I think we're a very dysfunctional board. And I think our personal interests get involved where they don't need to be. I know I try to stay on track and try to remember why I'm there, and that the issues that we're addressing are for everybody, not for somebody who doesn't agree or disagree, that we need to reach a happy medium. We don't need to agree, we can agree to disagree, as long as we come out with a valid direction that's going to service everybody. It's not easy. But I go and I try very hard to be prepared. I try to be knowledgeable. I try to use my experience and what I see happening and stay focused on those issues as much as possible.
Travis, in the last, Cliven Bundy is taking water from several streams feeding basins 222 and 223 to water his illegal grazing cattle. These basins are under VVWD jurisdiction, and NRS 533-503 says that the state engineer shall not issue a permit unless the applicant is legally entitled to place the livestock on the lands for which the permit is sought. If elected, will you support the VVWD asking the state engineer to enforce this statute?
You know what? That's a great question, and honestly, I don't have a great answer. One of the things I have learned as an engineer going through college, and that is that a lot of the time you may not know the answer right away, but you can do some serious research, and that's what I'm very good at. One of the things, so to be honest with you, I'd like to research that a little bit more, see exactly. I have never been asked that question, never even thought of that question before. So one of the things that I would like to let everybody know, right, is I don't claim to be the smartest person in the room. I don't claim to know all of the answers. But one thing I do know is I can research something, I can find a good answer that will help all of the water district. Now, so I hate to be like that, but I honestly do not have a good answer for you other than I can research that and then give you an answer afterward.
Sandra, with water being a very important issue here in Mesquite, has the Virgin Valley Water District ever considered regulating irrigation times for customers here?
To my knowledge, I don't think we've ever tried to regulate the irrigation time. We have X amount of irrigation shares, which are mostly used for the golf courses and for the farmers. Once that water is not available, I mean, we have X amount, they keep track of how much is used, but we have never tried just regulating when they can and can't use it. I think that would be probably very detrimental, especially to a golf course, because they need to water it all, be able to water whenever, and if you've had a summer like we've just had, they need to be able to have as much of that water when they need it, if it's available.
I probably should have said recommend, not regulate, actually. Use the wrong word there. But sometimes, you know that in Las Vegas they have their days that you can water and when you can wash your car. And so I was just curious to see, because it is a very special thing that we have, the water, we want to keep it as safe and keep it with us for as long as possible.
If I may, I think that has to do more with our potable water instead of our irrigation water. And with that in mind, I think we all need to conserve. Some people think we're conserving by raising your rates, and I don't consider that conservation. I think all landscaping should be regulated, should be watered on certain days, during certain hours, and when they're not, then you need to have somebody come knock on your door and tell you to turn it off. We only have so much water. So I think it's important for everybody to think about conserving water.
Mr. Anderson, as a potential newcomer to the board, are there any decisions that the current board has made recently that you disagree with or would have done differently?
There are some of the issues that I might have wanted to have a little bit more say on. Some of the new standard specifications and rules that go along with there. Case in point, one of the stipulations they have is to add more bedding sand to your pipe installation. Things like that I have a unique knowledge about, I feel that I can really help the water district to make a good thing. So there are things that I see that can be worked on, but there is nothing blatant. I really want to say that the current board and staff, I think, is doing a good job in making not amends, but working on making some of the mistakes the past board and past managers made before. And I think they're moving in the right direction. But I really do believe that I can help to increase that and to help that continue to grow and to add to that.
Sandra, this is a question I asked a city council candidate. In the last year, there was proposed lease of some public lands for fracking in central Utah and Nevada, which would have eventually posed a danger to the basins from which we get our drinking water. Luckily, those lease auctions were eventually canceled, but they'll come up again. Are you in favor of fracking in Nevada? Why or why not? And under what circumstances?
I am definitely not for fracking. Anything that endangers our water supply, I'm completely and totally against. I can't see myself voting for that at any given time. Our water, and they said on these vaults, we need to pay attention to those things. And yeah, these things will come up again where they're wanting to do something. And it's important for the staff and for us to keep track of when those issues come about so that we can respond to them and show the fact that we do not want that to happen here in our district.
Travis, in projecting future increases, what can you do for businesses here in Mesquite to give them ample time to incorporate any new increases into their budgets?
One of the things I think they can really do is with one of the issues they had lately is talking about, I just had a moment there, where to get the public input more into these, as far as when you're looking at the rate increases, I felt that they did a really good job on trying to show to the business owners, this is what we're looking at. The engineers are preparing these, the materials are being out there. For example, there was talk of out in Bunkerville a couple years ago in 2013, they were removing the secondary water system, which was basically when the water district started, it was to prepare a secondary conservation effort. Well, it turned out that that was very detrimental to the water district because they were having to put culinary water into that system. The water district did studies. They showed that that was not cost productive for the whole water district. And they actually did the study and pulled that water from Bunkerville. It was a very transparent process. They had meetings, they went through. I think that can happen with any of this.
Ms. Raymaker, kind of a similar question to what I asked Mr. Anderson earlier. As someone who sat on the water board for a while now, and as you see the city make efforts to grow economically and expand as far as the businesses that are in the city, how does the water board, what's the most efficient way that the water board can allocate those resources for these new businesses?
We have X amount of water. We have X amount of shares. We have about half of them right now that people are actually using. We have probably another quarter that are out there not being used that we're trying to get back through one of the recent things that went through legislature. We can't really control because the city, people come in, they go to the city, they apply for a license, they apply for business, they bring the plans to us. As long as they meet the plans, we can't refuse them. They have to meet the standards. They're given a will serve letter. And I don't think there's any way that we can actually change that. We need to be conscientious in the city as well. We want businesses, but we need to know exactly how much water there is. And I think that comes back again to having the study of the 222 basin so we know how much water we really have.
Great. Travis? I sometimes get confused when I'm out at the Virgin Valley Water District Board meetings when they're talking about, gee, we can get this much more money if we send our water down to Las Vegas because they pay more for it. That doesn't seem to jive with my thought about what a service district is. So I guess my question is, do you think the primary job of the Virgin Valley Water District is to provide water to the people and businesses within its service district? Or do you support sending water that is owned by the Virgin Valley Water District out of the valley for use by others? In other words, do you think that the charter of the water district is support the needs of water within the Virgin Valley as a water district? Or is instead their job to maximize the money they can make from the use of their assets, even if those uses are outside of the district?
Good question. I believe that it's twofold. I think that you can look at it both ways. The water district has a responsibility to provide quality water to its constituents, both Bunkerville and Mesquite. Part of that, you have to have money to operate that system. So when you look at just being able to closed mind situation of, I'm only going to provide that water to these folks at this rate, in the winter time, you have a lot of irrigation shares that are going down river. Why not be able to sell those to the Southern Nevada Water Authority at a higher rate to maximize what you can bring back to the citizens of Mesquite and Bunkerville? So I believe it's not just a simple, easy answer of it's this or that. I think you have to look at it both ways and show what you can maximize the effect for everybody.
Just a quick follow-up. Doesn't that turn the water district into something other than a water district whose job it is to provide water? If they're buying assets to maximize for profit by selling them to others, that sounds more like a financial institution of some type.
No, not at all. If they're able to maximize that water that they already have, and the people of Mesquite are not able to use that in the wintertime, why wouldn't you sell that down there for those folks? It just makes good financial sense. I guess you could look at it as a financial institution, but if you're able to have an asset that is not being used by those folks in the wintertime, I think you'd be dumb not to.
Sandra, similar to the question that was asked to Travis, what is your position on selling or leasing water to the Southern Nevada Authority?
I believe that the water we have, we need to keep here in the valley. I think that it was set up originally when we became a water district, that we were to provide water for the valley. I believe that if we take those shares and they get leased down, I know we have some that we've leased down there. Even when we purchased those shares, there was an agreement they were already being leased to SNWA. But my problem is yeah, we can make a lot of money. And yeah, people say, well, you're always worried about infrastructure. Well, that's one of the reasons we raised your rates. I believe that once the water's gone, we won't ever get it back. I know they think that this is a good thing, that we can do a variety of things with it, but you can't. And once it's gone, it's gone. I mean, if you look at the golf courses and we talk about using city water that they've recycled and what have you, there isn't enough for the golf courses to do it year round. There isn't enough for any of the businesses to do it year round. So I think the water needs to stay here.
Mr. Anderson, you said that you feel there's an ample supply of water here already. You said that you don't feel at this moment there's a study that needs to be done for Basin 222. So it doesn't appear that you share any concerns that some people in the West might have about, a drought in the area at all. Can you just clarify your stance on that?
Oh no, I definitely believe that there's a drought here. Being the civil engineer for Lake Mead, I saw firsthand. One of the aspects I worked with Lake Mead was extending the launch ramps. I saw how Overton Beach lost their marina there because of the drought conditions. I definitely believe in a drought situation. However, the best information that we have right now is showing that we have an ample supply. Now, that being said, I do believe that a study would be in order, but I do believe that there's things that we need to attack first prior to that situation. Looking at the infrastructure, some of these other needs, I think that those need to be addressed, and then we look at it. One of the other things about doing the basin study is it's not just Mesquite that's looking at Basin 222. Arizona, you can go across the state line and you can drill into Basin 222. So if the water district is the only source of revenue going into that, we need to have some of these other people paying on that too, and I don't see anybody stepping up right now.
Sandra, Mesquite is a city whose future is totally dependent on the availability of water. Currently, water supply is managed by the Virgin Valley Water District, which serves the Bunkerville area as well as the city of Mesquite. The board of the district is currently made up of 2 board representatives elected from Bunkerville and 3 board representatives elected by Mesquite citizens. Even though Bunkerville accounts for only about 5% of the water users and revenues of the Virgin Valley District. And I'll go off that part. Effectively, Bunkerville has enormously outsized control over the water policies and future of Mesquite. Do you think it is right that Bunkerville has such outsized representation on our water? 40% of the board seats by 5% of the users? And would you support legislation or other action to try and remedy this imbalance?
I believe when you go back and you read the legislature back for our water district, when the two came together, all the assets, all the bills, everything became Virgin Valley Water District. At that same point, there was 2 people appointed for them and 3 for Mesquite. Since then, Mesquite has now got almost 19,000 people. Bunkerville has maybe 1,000, maybe a little bit more than that. So Mesquite is suffering and spending all the money that the largest percent of the money that is spent on your infrastructure and providing you with water, delivery, and the cost is Mesquite. So why shouldn't Mesquite have a little larger say in what's going on? I believe that the legislature should make a change, and that I would like to see 4 people representing Mesquite and 1 from Bunkerville. They are important, they should have a right to say something, but I think because we're the largest, all of you are paying the cost of everything, that it should be changed.
Travis, why should the people of Mesquite give you their vote instead of the incumbent?
Very good question. And here's the long and short of it, I believe, that I've lived here since 2000. I have 4 kids ranging from age 20 to 9. I've lived here through the downturn of the economy. I've been through the thick and the thin, and I am fully invested in this community. Could have left when the downturn happened, but I didn't. My mom and dad used to ask me, so do you see yourself in Mesquite? And I said, yes, this is home to me now. Mesquite is my home. I'm fully committed. I do believe that I keep coming back to this, but I do believe I have a skill set that would greatly increase the board intelligence. I don't mean to say anything bad, but I do believe that I can help out dramatically. And I feel that it will only help the water board in the future, looking at future needs and the current needs right now.
Ms. Rainmaker, are there any concerns that you have about the amount of water that is available to the city of Mesquite?
I do have concerns because I honestly believe that the studies that were done on Basin 222, the majority of them were in 1969. We have been in a drought situation. We don't know how much water is really there. I know that if right now, with the amount of shares that we have leased, and will serves that people have, take about half of that amount. I believe we have a quarter of amount out there that we're trying to get back, or at least have developers pay a fee for it so that the water isn't just sitting there and not being utilized. I think that just say for instance, if Pulte's was to now suddenly develop and come in and pay all their fees for all the ordinance 2 fees to be able to have all their projects done out there, we would be out of water. So those are concerns to me that we really need to know how much we have, and I think the city needs to know. And I'd like to see the city get involved with us doing that study so that we all know where we're going and what's going to happen.
That concludes our Virgin Valley Water District forum. Mr. Anderson, Ms. Raymaker, thank you so much for being here. A round of applause, please. I think I need a glass of water after that. In 2011 and then in 2013. Al has lived in Mesquite since 2014, been married to his wife Phyllis, or 2004, I'm sorry. Been married to his wife Phyllis for 51 years. I was looking at the 1 in 51, and that is very impressive, sir. I'm 12 years. I hope I get to 51. Also, Mr. Art Pareda, born in California, has lived in Mesquite for 10 years, former firefighter, former combat veteran, single with 3 boys, 13 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here tonight. We appreciate it. I'm going to give each of you 1 minute to share with the audience a little bit about yourself and why you are a good choice for mayor of Mesquite, and then we will get started with questions. Mayor Littman.
We're on? Works. Thank you. I think I'm a good choice. First of all, my record stands for itself over the last several years as mayor. Prior to that, 3 years as city councilman, 3.5 years as city councilman. I was appointed or elected by the entire city council to take over the position of mayor when our other mayor vacated his office. I take my job very, very seriously, and those of you that know that try to contact me, I'm available 7 days a week, and believe me, I get calls 7 days a week.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Mark Pareda, and I gotta share something with you. When I filed my application to do this last April, the past 7 months, believe me, I've gotten up and I've said, Art, why in heavens are you doing this? Do you want the stress? Do you want all this? And you know what? My answer is, I really love Mesquite, and I'm very sincere about promoting and growing with Mesquite. I have my son here, Eric, and my grandson here, and I want to provide for the young families here. I really do. By that, promoting growth, by that, bringing in industry, by, you know, we're far from being a senior citizen community. We have to think about the young families and the kids and children that we have here and to produce and create jobs for them. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will start, as we have with the previous candidates, with a question from Corey Clementson. How do you feel the golf industry has affected the economy here in Mesquite in 2016? Mr. Littman.
I think the golf community has been a great boost to the golf community has been a great boost to Mesquite. It always has been. I know the times it was very difficult during the recession, and I watched it very carefully. Very fortunately, all our golf courses managed to squeak on by, and I think business is much better right now. I see nothing but growth in the future in the golfing industry in Mesquite, even though across the country it seems to be tapering off a little bit, but trends do that periodically as other sports activities become popular. I support the golf industry 100%, always have. I do not golf, by the way.
I do agree with Al. I really do. And one of the things that brought me over here was the Mesquite Amateur. And that's how I discovered Mesquite. And as I moved here and I came over here, then we had the long drive, the long drive competition, international competition. Unfortunately, the city lost that. And I says, there were a lot of people that were disappointed with that. And now, they moved over there to the NASCAR, where over there, and the golfers really weren't happy over there. Right now, the long drive is looking for a home. I understand they're back east somewhere. But golf is very important to the community, especially, you have some Class A golf courses here, and you have, the PGA qualifying here also. So I fully support the golf industry, 100%, and I am a golfer, and I need to get back out there.
Okay, Al, as promised, you as an incumbent get the same question, long-winded question I asked everybody about public officials making themselves available in forums like this and to their citizens.
You don't have to ask the whole question. Okay? The answer to that question is, I'll speak for myself as an individual, and I believe everybody that knows me knows that I've been available since 2011, 7 days a week, every single day. In 2011, they had about a half a dozen of these forums for city council because there were 11 people running for office. I attended each and every one of them. The same thing occurred in 2013, where I attended every single one of them. The same thing this year. There's been 2 that I've been asked to be at, and I'm at both of those. I cannot speak for other candidates as to why or why not they will not show up to a public forum. I find public forums fascinating. I also, by the way, spoke the other day at the Desert Dames Luncheon with over 150 ladies, or 140 ladies present, and left the second half open for questions, of which there were numerous questions asked. Every one was answered. I always answer the questions.
Hello, Art. Nevada is one of 20 states voting on recreational marijuana this November. If passed, how do you see the tax revenues helping Mesquite?
That is something that's coming up, quite a bit. And, the tax revenue will help. But there are so many pros and cons on recreational MJ. And, you have the statistics that are already coming out of Colorado, and where children are getting overdosed and stuff. And I think what was happening, I was talking to somebody earlier, is recreational marijuana they're looking at it like cigarettes. Okay, there it is, and they're just putting it in the counter, accessible to children. Now, we don't need to do that. But yet, it would enhance and bring in a tax base. But at the same time, how do you control that? How do you control the quality of it that comes out? And the other thing and the issue that you have here, because the feds haven't really approved that. So at the local level, we're okay, but at the federal level, we are not. So, it's kind of up in the air of what's going to happen with this particular legislation if it does pass.
Mayor Littman, this is a question that was submitted by a resident, and unfortunately my computer died, so I can't identify who that was or repeat it verbatim, but essentially the question was, how involved have you been in speaking with local business owners to engage with Southwest Gas and just kind of to bridge the communication between local business and Southwest Gas so that Southwest Gas can put together an application to bring to the Public Utilities Commission?
We held our very first meeting last week at City Hall upstairs. We had over 60 business people represented. That was our first actual face-to-face with businesses and Southwest Gas. I've been meeting with representatives of Southwest Gas for the last 18 months periodically. They have to go through an extremely complicated process. Even though we want natural gas, or many of us want natural gas for business, it isn't just as easy as it sounds. They have to go through a very extensive application process on the state level to justify what they're doing. So the survey will go for a little while longer, and I think until they get better results. It's a very complicated issue because you're putting the chicken before the cart, or whatever the case may be. You've got to have a demand for it, but you don't know if you've got a demand for it if you don't have some of the businesses here that say they need it. So this is something that has to be worked out on the state level to decide whether we are or we are not going to get natural gas.
And just Just to be fair to the person who posed the question, that's what they were asking. They were wondering, what role have you taken in trying to get businesses to take that survey, get businesses to provide their input to Southwest County?
As an individual, I have not been. As a city representative, the mayor, we have put it up on website. It's very accessible, right on the front page of our webpage. You can reach that. We put out press releases to the paper. I've spoken with several of the larger businesses individually about this issue, and that is as far as this point. I haven't gotten little businesses or anything like that.
Art, this is a question from one of our readers. It says, nearly every country in the world acknowledges that man-made climate change is real and a danger to the future of the planet. What's your opinion on this subject, and what measures would you support to move our city to a more sustainable future?
That's a presidential question, but I'll I'd say I was about, when I was in high school, I was sitting at the barbershop, and I picked up a Time magazine, and it said that they had detected the Earth axis had changed approximately 5 degrees, and this was about 1965, and they predicted that in 30 years, climate change would happen. And sure enough, they called it. It is real. It is something that is happening, and this is something that was predicted in the mid-60s. So climate change, what can we do? We really can't do anything, because we do have to protect our own ozone layer. We have to protect those things that are going to affect us, not just now, but for the longevity. I mean, it's something, because in California, we were aware of the gasoline. We had to put vapor recovery in gasoline, et cetera, because that was damaging the ozone layer. And climate change is very real, and we should take it very seriously.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Much of the Mesquite Boulevard corridor looks like it did back in the 50s and 60s. Are there any plans to enhance the curb appeal?
Actually, it doesn't look like the 50s and 60s, because in the 50s and 60s, we had 5 dairy farms located on Mesquite Boulevard. Mesquite Boulevard, with the exception of City Hall, the fire department, and I believe 2 very small parcels, are all privately owned by other individuals, not by the city of Mesquite. So as far as curb appeal goes, there isn't much we can do, because we're not building anything on Mesquite Boulevard. The city is not in that business. I don't know how better to answer the question. As far as asking businesses to clean up, you can. I've been told before, well, why don't you just condemn that building? If you know anything about the condemnation in the state of Nevada, property owners have a lot of rights. You just don't say, I'm condemning your property. Number one, you better have an awfully good reason for it, and it can't be used for private development, not in this state. And secondly, with that, we would have to end up paying fair market value for that property and negotiating for it. The city is not in that business of buying lots that are worth, as an example, $300,000 and paying $5 million for it. Because some of those are priced just like Manhattan real estate. And we're not in Manhattan.
Mr. Pareda, if elected, what would your first order of business be as mayor?
One of the first orders of business, right, to me, is to get together with department heads. Get together with department heads and see where they are, where they were, where they are, and where they want to be. And what can we do to improve city services? One of the things I heard earlier with the city council here is police and fire understaffed, and having some serious issues with manning problems, et cetera, et cetera. That becomes a risk issue. When you have police and fire responding and they are undermanned and understaffed, that becomes a risk management issue. You are understaffed under ISO, who regulates manning of emergency personnel, under the National Fire Protection Association. So the city is at risk when you have an engine company responding with one person. Should they get in an accident, That is a major risk management issue, and you have some major liability issues. So I would take a look at that and see where we have been, where we are, and what we can do to improve.
Mayor Lippman, has been discussed quite a bit tonight about the outsized influence that the city of Bunkerville and the Bunkerville town has on the Virgin Valley Water District, with 5% of the customers and 40% of the representatives. It seems like Mesquite inevitably elects one person or three that seems to vote with Bunkerville all the time, and so oftentimes many feel that Mesquite's needs and protections are not adequately served. Would you support, do you think it's right that Bunkerville has outsized representation on the board? And would you support legislation or other action to try and remedy the imbalance?
Here's how it works, John. It would be brought up before City Council as part of a ordinance change, not an ordinance, but a, I don't know what we call that, because it's not an ordinance on that, to ask the state legislature if they were willing to do this. This would take a minimum of a 3-2 vote on the part of the City Council. Should the City Council vote that direction, I am sworn to uphold the law, and I would do so automatically and go with the majority of the council. Now you say, of course, I could veto a yes vote on the part of the City Council. That is not a vote that I would veto. I think we need to look very seriously at changing the balance between the Bunkerville Water Board and the representation the City of Mesquite has. But again, it is not a decision for the mayor to make. It's not a decision for the City Council to make, but it can be brought up to the state legislature requesting that they do so. After that, it's up to them.
That was my question. Would you support it? Thank you.
Yes.
You are elected as the mayor of Mesquite. What do you see as being the biggest obstacle for increasing business permits as well as jobs?
What would be the biggest obstacle for increasing building permits and jobs? Well, that's one thing that we're going through right now, and I don't know if the city realizes it. We are going through some growing pains. I've been involved with that, and sometimes it appears right now that you can't see the forest because of the trees. We have to promote outside and come in and get these building permits, get use permits going, and promote industry commercialism. But the deal is, at the same time, Mr. Littman brought it up at City Council. I fully agree. Kids are graduating and they're leaving. So the deal is, we need to give them an incentive to stay here. We don't want Mesquite to be to learn something, and then once they learn it, they leave and they take their knowledge and expertise. We need them to stay here.
It's a great segue into my question for Mr. Littman. At the chamber luncheon last month, you mentioned that one of the challenges that the city is facing really is its workforce. A lot of young people who aren't necessarily old enough to work, and a lot of retired folks who are no longer part of the workforce. So to build off what Mr. Pareto was saying, how can we provide an incentive to develop the workforce here in the city that's necessary to the city's vision of economic growth that they currently have?
Well, currently we have Mesquite Works. We have a contract going, not the city, mind you, but outside agencies, with MRBI as well as with the Salvation Army for training young people into some of the new potential positions that are coming into Mesquite. I talk to people down at CSN all the time in Las Vegas because they've got a lot of vocational programs. They also have thousands and thousands of students. Our only high school here graduated 135 students last year. That's about the norm for them. It runs between 135, 140, 145 every year, has for quite some time. We don't have the numbers alone to start with. Some of them, of course, go off to CSN, some of them go up to Dixie, some go into the workforce. Some kids are just not interested at age 17 and 18 working, period. They will eventually come into the workforce as there's openings for them. As far as keeping them here, they need the training. CSN, when I taught at CSN a number of years ago, we had a page plus of courses. There are 4 academic courses being offered this fall. The city has no control over what CSN does. In other words, these kids have nothing to go to, literally.
Art, the city, as we mentioned, has been suffering a budget shortfall of about $1 million a year for as long as most of us have lived here. And of course, that can't continue. Mayor Lippman proposed a potential solution, and it was voted down by the city council involving putting a special license fee on packaged liquor sales. Would you have supported that proposal? And if not, what do you propose to try and balance the city budget?
To some extent, I do, but I notice it's like a taxing here, little tax here, little tax here. One thing I did agree at one of the city council meetings, city council person Rapson, he says, when Lee was we were proposing the 3% tax, he said we went 1.5. He said, Rapson said, and I agreed with him, he says, I prefer just a tax across the board. We are the lowest tax rate here in the state of Nevada. But at the same time, what do we have to show for it? Every year, we are broke. We have to realize that we don't have a tax base. We don't have a revenue to carry us through another recession. If another recession were to bottom out on us, we wouldn't have those mason jars underneath the porch to save us. We have to create a tax base. And by that, we need to bring industry and commercial business in.
Mayor Lippman, if you are reelected as the mayor of Mesquite, what do you see as your biggest obstacle for increasing business permits as well as jobs?
Well, to start with, we have no trouble increasing business permits. We're getting people coming all the time. The problem is, it is not the function of city government to bring business into Mesquite. We have Chamber of Commerce, we have MRBI that's working and bringing in businesses. Granted, not as fast as I'd like to see them, but then again, we don't have a solution for dragging in businesses. We have incentive programs that we have laid out. We have lots of available land that we have made very clear that it's available. It is up to the individual business to decide that, yes, they want to locate in Mesquite. Once they make that decision, or at least look at Mesquite, we sit down with them. I've sat down with every one of these major companies over the last 5 years and literally offered them everything that we legally can offer them to come to Mesquite. They make the choice. A quick example, there was a company that came to a city council meeting, very, very interested. This is just several months ago. They changed their mind because they decided that they wanted land even cheaper than Mesquite. I don't know where in the state of Nevada there's land with water that's cheaper than Mesquite, but they wanted something free and we weren't going to give them all that land.
Excuse me, but may I address that? Is that permitted?
You may address it as part of your time coming up with this next question. You may spend some of your allotted time, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Pereira.
It's not the job of the city to bring in, businesses, but one thing I enjoy, I love trade shows. In California, I would go to trade shows. Las Vegas, I love trade, industry, boat shows, and computer shows, etc. And there's always somebody there, at least 2 to 3 Chamber of Commerces there promoting and selling the city. And going to the industry and saying, hey, we're giving a presentation here at 10, 2, and 4. Remember Dr. Pepper? 10, 2, and 4, we're giving a presentation here. Here's a CD, come and visit us, we'll give you 2 days, and we'll come and we'll see what we can do. Chamber of Commerce can do that. I would love to see the MRB and the Chamber of Commerce to do that. If the Chamber of Commerce can go to Ireland, or thought about going to Ireland, Why can't they go to the trade shows in Las Vegas and sell the city of Mesquite? A lot of people don't know where the city of Mesquite is. And we need to promote it in one way or another if we're going to grow. We are completely dependent upon ourselves whether we are going to make it or not.
That was all of your time, so.
Yes, okay.
Mayor Littman, who seem to have at least one side of the political equation in the state of Nevada that seems to be reviving the enchantment with having a nuclear waste disposal facility here at Yucca Mountain. Many people thought that was a relatively dead issue, but it seems to be rearing its head again. As I said earlier, that involves shipping an enormous amount of that toxic nuclear waste right through the middle of our city. As mayor, would you support or oppose such a plan?
Mayor Goodman and I, along with the other mayors of Southern Nevada, have talked about this issue numerous times. Other than the fact, also with Nellis Air Force Base, by the way, because I serve on their civilian military council, and lo and behold, they tell us that they're shipping nuclear waste all the time through the state. They don't bother to tell us about it for security reasons. Would I support it? Not knowingly, I wouldn't support it, no. Does it happen anyway? Yep. And does the city of Mesquite have any control over it whatsoever? And the answer is absolutely not, short of standing in the middle of the I-15 with a sign.
Art, what does the master plan look like to you?
I love Mesquite's master plan. The people that designed that, I'm very familiar with thousands of master plans that I reviewed and worked with in Orange County, with a population of 3 million people. The master plan here flows so good within what is called the wildland interface, the residential and commercial areas. It is very well put together, and then it has the industrial base, the commercial, and it flows very well along to the residential area and so forth. It has so much potential, and you know, that's the deal is, and I think that's why I applied for this position, because the city of Mesquite has so much potential. It really does. It's just a matter if you want to grow with Mesquite. You know, I can't do it by myself. I can't. You have to elect a city council that's going to meet your needs to grow. I can't do it. I really can't. But the city council, and you have to elect the city council that will promote that master plan. It is beautiful. It's ready to go.
Surprise, got another business question for you. You brought up a really interesting point at the Mayor's Forum, again at the Chamber Luncheon. You said that businesses need a plan to survive the summer months. Recently, my favorite business in town, Playoffs, succumbed to that stress of the summer lull. So do you want to address that? How can businesses kind of accommodate for the slow season?
Let me answer your first question because you have an incorrect answer on that. It didn't fold because of summer business. It folded because the business was in need of a tremendous amount of structural work that the landlord and the owner of that property would not pay for. So it posed a real issue. That property now is being looked at right now by a major corporation because I met with them Thursday in Las Vegas. And to answer Art's question, yeah, I go to places to meet with businesses on an indirect basis. You know, I don't go down knocking on doors. That's certainly not what my job is to do. But I did meet with them, so that's not an issue. Many businesses come to Mesquite that are very, very small in nature. You know, you've got mom and you've got pop and you've got a couple of cousins. They open up, and after the second month, they can't pay the rent, let alone pay some of their employees. We had a business fold just the other day again in Mesquite because they didn't have enough backing. They came in on a shoestring, and the minute business was not exactly what they wanted, they had to close their doors. They just couldn't pay the bills. MRBI works with these businesses, and now we have some other people in other agencies trying to work with young businesses that come into Mesquite. It's extremely important that they have a business plan when they open up their business, and they understand the economics of doing business. You can make a good hamburger at home, doesn't mean you can open up a restaurant and sell hamburgers.
Art, public lands are all around us. A lot of people really love Gold Butte and a lot of the recreational facilities we have near us. What is your position regarding the proposals by some western states organizations that seek to transfer of public federal lands to the states?
We do have a lot of federal land, especially here in Nevada. And my experiences, I have worked with the Bureau of Land Management. I have worked with the Sierra Clubs in the development of master plans in Southern California. I was there at a time, believe it or not, that there were approximately 30,000 people moving in on a monthly basis into Southern California. But bring it back here, the city of Mesquite exists because of the Bureau of Land Management. And we need to protect this land. We need to protect the land for future uses, for future years. When I hear Hardy say he was born and raised here, and he remembers growing up here and nothing has changed. It's still the same dirt and sand. I'm sorry, that is not dirt, that is not sand. All he sees is weeds. This is an ecological area, and we need to protect it and save it, and let the Bureau of Land Management manage the land.
Al, I asked Art a question earlier about the master plan. Can you add anything to that, or?
Certainly. The master plan is a document that's looked at on a regular basis to see if, yes, indeed, we're following it. Of course, you're going to make changes. When the master plan was first developed, Mesquite had under 2,500 people. So, yet they laid it out beautifully. Now, you have to understand that they didn't lay it out on the other side of the freeway. That was already 90% done long ago. But the industrial sections of town, all the layout of above the I-15, when it came in 1975, was looked at. The master plan is a living document, and we do review it as necessary. However, we have not done a comprehensive plan review in a long time due to the excessive costs of doing so. And we haven't had any particular issues that have driven us to that at this point. Will we get a time when we have to completely reanalyze the master plan? It's possible. Right now, everything seems to be working fine. And you can tell that by the record of the very few zoning changes we've had to make in the master plan since we started the master plan. And we do get asked periodically about major zoning changes.
Mr. Pereira, I don't think this is necessarily directly the mayor's bag here, but it is something it's a statewide initiative, and it's something you said you'd like to see the city take the lead on, and that's raising the minimum wage. You also said you spoke to businesses who feel that the city's business friendly. Have they expressed any concern about what a raised minimum wage how that might affect their business adversely?
Let me answer this way. Mesquite is truly an oasis. It sits in the middle of nowhere. 37 miles that way is St. George, 70 miles is Las Vegas. It sits here. We are completely independent of everybody else. Okay? 95% of the people that work here live here. That means that same force, they're going to consume, purchase, and get services here in Mesquite. Okay? Yes, periodically we're going to go to Costco, periodically we're going to St. George, Las Vegas, but if you give that raise, and I'm not advocating $15 an hour, I'm a little lower, but These people that you give a raise to, guess what? They're gonna consume and buy here in Mesquite. And you know what? They're even going to gamble more. So it's a share type thing. And do the prices go up? No. There was an article in the paper that McDonald's was gonna start charging $17 for a Big Mac. All it did is go up 12 cents.
All right, very good, gentlemen. Mr. Lippman, Mr. Pareda, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here tonight. Please, a round of applause for our mayoral candidates. Our thanks to, of course, to our panel, Lorraine, Lucas, and John. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I know we ran a little bit late. Thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to get out and vote. And thank you very much. Drive safe. Have a good night.